Welcome to Es ist etwas Wahnsinniges mit der Kunst. There is something mad about the art. The German-Jewish art dealer Alfred Flechtheim and his heirs fight for restitution in our series Flight or Fight, Stories of Artists Under Repression. I'm Rachel Stern, Executive Director of the Fritz Ascher Society for Persecuted, Ostracized, and Banned Art based in New York. Today, I'm honored to introduce Berlin journalist and author Michael Sontheimer, who was born in 1955 in Freiburg, Germany. He studied modern history and politics at the Free University in Berlin. Becoming a journalist, he was one of the founders of the daily newspaper Die Tageszeit. Later, he was a staff writer with Die ZEIT and Der Spiegel. He published 10 books on political and historical issues, like Goetz, Michael Sontheimer, How Julius Fromm's Condom empire fell to the Nazis. Other Press, New York, 2009. After the presentation, there will be time for Q&A, so please post your questions. Welcome, Michael Sontheimer.
Thank you, Rachel. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, thank you that I've got the opportunity today to talk about Alfred Flechtheim. It's not a very popular issue, so I'm happy to have the chance to talk about this. A man who was very important for the development of the German art market and was probably the most important person for bringing in French art, but also young German art into the more conservative circles of the German museums and galleries. And he was probably the most important German art dealer in the 1920s and also a passionate art collector. As a Jew, Flechtheim was persecuted by the National Socialists and robbed of his paintings. And so today, we will also talk about how Flechtheim's heirs are still trying to get back pictures that once were owned by him. As they have discovered, this is a tough, at times undignified fight against hard of hearing officials in museums, against politicians and against lawyers. If we start from the places in Berlin that played an important role in Alfred Flechtheim's life, near the famous Kurfürstendamm, there is a memorial plaque on the white facade of a stately house at Bleibtreustraße 15. It says, Alfred Flechtheim, art dealer, publisher, and promoter of modern art, lived in this house from 1923 to 1933. The second location in Berlin that was important to Flechtheim, there was the house Lützowufer 13, on the ground floor of which his gallery was housed. In its place today stands a faceless modern office building at the Landwehrkanal. One of the few people who have an idea of what pictures Flechtheim had hanging in his apartment on Bleibtreustraße is the Marburg-based lawyer Markus Stötzl. When he was commissioned by Alfred Flechtheim's heirs in 2008, he had no idea that the fight for the art dealer's pictures would take up most of his professional life. A medical doctor named Michael Halten from San Francisco, whose family came from Berlin, appeared at Stötzl's office in January 2008. Michael's father, Heinz Hulisch, born in 1910, escaped the Holocaust in 1933 by fleeing to Great Britain, where he anglicized his names to Henry Halten. His son, Michael, now 77 years old, as he has told me, I think in 3 days he will turn 78. He is probably listening today, which I really appreciate. He is now 77. He grew up in London, studied medicine in Cambridge, emigrated to Toronto, and finally moved to California to San Francisco. Michael Halten, who refers to Flechtheim as Uncle Alfred, he should correctly say Great Uncle Alfred, is not the only heir. Last year in London died at the age of 96 Penny Halten, his father's second wife, or in old-fashioned terms, his stepmother. She had one daughter and two grandchildren. In 2008, lawyer Stötzel was commissioned by Michael and Penny to research for works of art once owned by Alfred Flechtheim and his wife Betty Flechtheim. When we talk about the Flechtheim collection, we are talking about works by Pablo Picasso, Georges Braque, Max Beckmann, Paul Klee, and other modern classics. And we are not just talking about pictures in Germany. A painting that once belonged to the art dealer now are in American and French museums. From a purely legal point of view, Flechtheim's heirs are no longer entitled to the return of works of art. All deadlines for compensation and restitution of property lost during the Nazi era have long since passed. What Michael Hartmann and his stepmother or a daughter of a stepmother have on their side is morality and, in many cases, public opinion. Nothing more, but also nothing less. However, in December 1998, the German Federal Republic signed the Washington Declaration with 43 other states, thereby committing itself to searching for and returning works of art confiscated between 1933 and 1945. In the event of disputes between heirs and museums, fair and just solution, that was the term, were to be found. In preparation for the conference initiated by the US government and Jewish organizations, West German diplomats had feared that the Federal Republic could be addressed with new compensation demands, but this was not the case. The representative of the German government was able to sign the declaration without any problems. It was and is now in no way legally binding, a mere declaration of intent. At the photo I'm showing, you see Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State of the United States at the Washington conference. And I find it quite astonishing, if I allow me a remark, that on the panel, the only man. So art restitution seems to be a quite male issue. And on the 7th of December 2023, the 25th anniversary of the Washington Declaration was celebrated in the State Library here in Berlin, in the Staatsbibliothek, with a festive event followed by a standing reception, although I personally don't know what there was to celebrate in Germany. The Green Minister of State for Culture, Claudia Roth, explained, the Washington principles have changed a lot in the German cultural landscape because they have significantly increased awareness of the crimes of cultural property theft in Nazi Germany. Provenance research has been greatly expanded financially in terms of personnel over the last 25 years. All of this has led to numerous restitutions or just and fair solutions. Well, that sounds nice. And for over 25 years, the Minister of State for Culture had always fallen into the same guilt pathos when the Washington Agreement was mentioned that experienced Germany's call upon when the Holocaust is mentioned. Germany, I quote, fully accept its moral responsibility for the restitution of looted art, said the Christian Democrat and Minister of State for Culture, Bernd Neumann, in 2008. Neumann's party colleague, Monika Grütters, as his successor, declared in January 2019, countless most Jewish collectors of art and cultural assets lost their property during the National Socialist tyranny. This suffering, this injustice can never be made good again. If you allow me a personal comment, even if this suffering can never be made good again, couldn't the heirs of those people who lost works of art at least be given back stolen works of art and those lost during the escape from Nazi Germany? The federal government commissioner for culture and media has the problem that thanks to German federalism and the cultural sovereignty of the states, most museums belong to the states, or Länder as we say in German, or municipalities. The culture ministers can only appeal to them to seek fair and just solutions with heirs as required by the Washington Agreement. But what is fair and what is just? Museums officials who want to keep their paintings and lawyers who claim them for theirs usually disagree on this. All sorts of controversies have also developed in the Flechtheim case. Which of his paintings were confiscated or sold out of sheer necessity? Which paintings were his properties as a private collector? Which were the property of his gallery? Which had artists only given him on commission? Which paintings did he intend to sell? Which were sold after the Nazis came to power? Was he forced to sell works of art in order to keep himself afloat in exile? Hardly any documents from Flechtheim's gallery have survived, and no written legacy existed. Despite intensive research, much remains obscure, but one thing is beyond question. The Flechtheim case is the largest, but also the most complicated case of art restitution still left in Germany. Such superlatives fit Flechtheim quite well because, according to everything that friends and contemporary witnesses have reported about him, modesty was not necessarily one of his virtues. Born in Münster in 1878 as the son of a grain wholesaler, the Westphalian had the self-confidence of a man who grew up in prosperity. He completed a merchant's apprenticeship in Paris, London, Liverpool, and Odessa, but his love of art was stronger. There is something mad about the art, he wrote in his diary in 1913. A passion stronger than gambling, alcohol, and women. Alfred Flechtheim was not particularly interested in women on the erotic level. He was more attracted to men. To silence the rumors about their son's homosexuality, his parents arranged a marriage. In September 1910, Flechtheim married Betty Goldschmidt, whose family was one of the richest Jewish families in Dortmund, thanks to their real estate holdings. Flechtheim invested a large part of the formidable dowry in Cubist art during his honeymoon in Paris. As George Gross later recounted, 120,000 Reichsmark, to the horror of his parents-in-law, who then forced the couple to separate their property. Flechtheim caused a stir together with the Artists' Association Sonderbund, which organized exhibitions of contemporary art in Düsseldorf and Cologne with paintings by Van Gogh, Cézanne, Munch, Picasso, and others. In December 1913, Flechtheim opened a gallery in Düsseldorf. In its first catalogue, he wrote, "I am finally in a position to fulfill a long-held wish to concern myself only with things of art." Only half a year later, Flechtheim had to deal with the war and served in the Westphalian Ulan regiment, fortunately for him in the rear. Nevertheless, his gallery collapsed and he had to auction off his stock. But at Easter 1919 already, he reopened his gallery in Düsseldorf, this time on the posh Königsallee, and he was seized by the publisher's itch, as he later recalled it. In addition to catalogs, he also published graphic editions, books, and the magazine Querschnitt. In it, he had art, sport, and dance reported on with a snobbish air. One editor called the paper Magazine of Current Eternal Values. Writers in Querschnitt were Walter Benjamin, Gottfried Benn, Alfred Döblin, Leon Feuchtwanger, Ernest Hemingway, Franz Kafka, Else Lasker Schüler, Robert Musil, Ezra Pound, Alexander Pushkin, but also Benito Mussolini. The latter wrote in a warning to modern women, "The excessive desire for thinness and a slim figure is absolutely destructive." The paper was founded by Flechtheim in 1920, from 1924 to 1903, the Ullstein Publishing House and the Propyläen Publishing House published Querschnitt as a monthly magazine. In 1936, it was banned by the National Socialists. Querschnitt was the zeitgeist magazine of the proverbial golden 20s, which were not golden at all for most of the Germans, but Flechtheim belonged to that narrow privileged class that was able to get intoxicated by cultural luxury and libertinage in the crisis-ridden Weimar Republic. He wore extravagant, elegant suits and usually had a cigar between his teeth. In October 1921, Flechtheim opened a gallery in Berlin on the Lutze-Ufer. The parties he hosted in the capital became legendary. The banker's wife, Elsa von Mendelssohn-Bartholdy, made sandwiches, alcohol manufacturers provided the liquor, poets, politicians, dancers appeared, a stimulating mix. Flechtheim appeared as a torero in an Andalusian costume and danced seguilladas. Thea Sternheim, the wife of the successful playwright Karl Sternheim, became friends with Flechtheim early on and thought, how heartwarming it is to meet a Jew who does not hide his ancestry, but is proud of it. She quotes Flechtheim, "Don't you also find King David more feudal than such a fickle Hohenzoller?" A French journalist described Flechtheim as feverish, impetuous, cheerful, desperate, sensual, unfair, enthusiastic. He could also be impudent and vulgar. In any case, he called Otto Dix a cunt painter, although Dix probably painted the most beautiful portrait of the art dealer, which can be seen today in the Neue Nationalgalerie, New National Gallery in Berlin. Before he entered the art trade, Flechtheim had already bought paintings by Van Gogh, Picasso, Braque, Cézanne, Matisse, and other French painters. Now, as a gallery owner, he represented the young German artists, including Max Beckmann, Paul Klee, and George Goetz. When he threw a party to celebrate his 50th birthday in March 1928 at the Hotel Kaiserhof on Wilhelmplatz in Berlin, friends produced a commemorative publication in which Joachim Ringelnatz, Ernest Hemingway, and other authors honored him. Max Beckmann, George Gross, and other artists contributed drawings. The prominent guests of the party included the actress Tilla Durieux, the poet Gottfried Benn, the publisher Hermann Ullstein, and also the boxer Max Schmeling. The coming heavyweight world champion had stated, "If I were a painter, I would want to be in Flechtheim's stable." The art dealer was at the height of his success with his galleries in Düsseldorf, Berlin, Frankfurt, and Cologne, when the global economic crisis dealt him a first serious blow in the autumn of 1929, the Black Friday, as we know it. The art market collapsed. Soon afterwards, the Nationalist Socialists identified him as an enemy in cultural politics. In December 1932, the NSDAP magazine Illustrierter Beobachter ran an article entitled "The Race Question is the Key to the World History," with a portrait of Flechtheim, a national culture politician castigated the, I quote, "brazen Jewish Negro smearing of the German national soul by the grain Jew from Odessa." Flechtheim had the misfortune of perfectly matching the Nazis' anti-Semitic stereotype with his large nose, black hair, but also his sharp intellect and his sharp tongue. His pronounced Jewish type, wrote his friend Thea Sternheim in her diary, has an irritating effect. In March 1933, SA men in Düsseldorf forced the cancellation of an auction which Flechtheim was participating in. At the time, the Düsseldorf gallery was taken over by Flechtheim's Aryan manager Alex Förmel, who joined the NSDAP and the SA. To pay off debts, Förmel pawned works of art from Flechtheim's private collection, began selling sculptures in Switzerland. After the war, Vömel could hardly remember Flechtheim was not ashamed to pose as a Nazi victim and to apply for compensation, which was, however, rejected. Half a year after the National Socialists came to power, Flechtheim was penniless in Paris. What horrifies me most is Flechtheim's senseless fear, wrote Thea Sternheim in July 1933. In the completely empty bar, he looks left and right during the most harmless conversations to make sure that no one is overhearing us. Flechtheim still managed to send pictures from his private collection, pictures by George Braque, Juan Gris, and others, to exhibitions in Switzerland as loans. I have to leave here, he wrote in a letter to a niece in September 1933. I can't do any more business here in Germany. The liquidator closed down his Berlin gallery and probably got his hands on one or two pictures in the process. On October 1933, Alfred Flechtheim wrote to George Gross, "Dear Gross, I am in Paris. I have left my gallery. Since my artists and I have been defamed, there is no chance of earning money in Berlin. I need to see money because I have no money and I'm broke. The paintings are not sailing under my flag. I have no money and I'm broke." The Führer said that people like us, like Mies, like Klemperer, this is Mies van der Rohe, the architect, and Victor Klemperer, the Führer said that people like us, like Mies, like Klemperer, belong either in prison or in a madhouse, since he keeps his word and doesn't threaten empty-handed. Every chance is there. My wife is giving up the apartment and then coming here. We are as poor as church mice and nervous. Flechtheim tried to do business in Paris with his partner Gustav Kahnweiler, whose brother had worked in his Frankfurt branch. He also organized exhibitions in London for a renowned gallery with paintings by Paul Klee and other artists persecuted in Germany by the National Socialists. To protect his wife Betty, he traveled to Berlin and the two divorced amicably. In the British capital, which Flechtheim never liked, he suffered the final blow of fate. After falling on black ice, he contracted blood poisoning in a hospital from a rusty nail on his bed. The amputation of one of his legs came too late. On March 9, 1937, Alfred Flechtheim died, as an English acquaintance recalled, in utmost misery and pain and despair. His wife, Betty Flechtheim, who was with him in his last days in London, returned to Berlin and initially did not want to flee Germany. Then she could not afford the so-called Reichsfluchtsteuer, Reichsflight. A friend reported in December 1941. After Betty Flechtheim had been asked to be ready for deportation to Minsk with 25 kilograms of luggage, she cooked herself some rice porridge, put the necessary amount of Veronal in it, and ate the porridge. Veronal, you must know, was a strong sleeping medication and was very common or popular for people who wanted to commit suicide in these years. When the Gestapo broke down the door the next morning, Betty was still breathing despite having taken the strong sleeping pill. Betty Flechtheim eventually died in the Jewish hospital in Berlin. Her remaining assets, which verfielen zugunsten des Reichs, as the robbery of Jews was often bureaucratically called, also included paintings. But which ones were they? How many paintings did she own? How many works of art did the Flechtheim couple's private collection contain? Markus Stötzl, the lawyer for the Flechtheim heirs, estimates that there were over 300 works of art. Flechtheim and Gross expert Ralf Jentsch thinks that there are up to 300. There was also a collection of so-called tribal art from the South Seas. Today, we would rather speak of looted art in a colonial context from the global South. In any case, over 200 pieces that are now in museums in Cologne, Zurich, and other cities. It is largely unclear which pictures were still hanging in Betty Flechtheim's apartment when the Gestapo sealed it. By this time, the collection had already been scattered to the four winds. Alfred Flechtheim had left a will. In it, he had named his nephew Henry Halton, formerly Heinz Hulisch, son of his sister-in-law, as his sole heir, the father of Michael Halton. After the war, Henry Halton applied in West Berlin for the return of the property stolen from Betty Flechtheim by the German Reich. The Berlin District Court granted him the claim in May 1954 and awarded Halton 20,400 Deutschmark in compensation, of which 11,400 Mark were for the furniture and the household goods in the 5-room apartment. For the paintings by, I quote the court decision, Hofer, Klee, George Gross, Matisse, Monet, and Renoir, world-famous artists, the chamber estimated the replacement value at 8,000 Deutschmark. This is, even if you take into account the enormous price increases for works by these artists, a ridiculously small amount. So it is understandable that the Flechtheim heirs did not want to be fobbed off with these 8,000 Deutschmark, quite apart from the fact that they had not been compensated in any way for the loss of the paintings belonging to Alfred Flechtheim's galleries. So after the Washington Declaration was passed in 1998, they tried to get the pieces of art restituted that once belonged to Alfred Flechtheim and his galleries. The toughest battle developed over 6 paintings by the great expressionist Max Beckmann. In March 2009, lawyer Stötzl turned to the Bayerische Staatsgemäldesammlung, the Bavarian state painting collections, which were considered to be the owners of the paintings, and ended up with art historian Andrea Bambi, the head of the Provenance Research Department. The lawyer explained why, in his opinion, 6 the Beckmann paintings that were not legally owned by the state of Bavaria, but Alfred Flechtheim's heirs. Among these paintings is Quappi in Blau, a portrait of Beckmann's second wife, Mathilde von Kaulbach. Flechtheim bought it from her in 1928. The art dealer acquired another portrait, La Duchessa di Maldevi, and 4 still lifes in 1931. But after Flechtheim had fallen out with Beckmann, he wanted to sell these paintings again in the spring of 1932 and offered them cheaply to Munich art dealer Israel Ber-Neumann, who had emigrated to New York. The paintings found their way to Neumann's gallery in Munich and were taken over by his partner Günther Franke. Franke eventually donated them along with 24 other works by Beckmann to the Free States of Bavaria in 1976 in return for a substantial annuity for his wife and children. There is a postcard from the summer of 1933 that Flechtheim sent from Florence, Italy, to George Gross, whose gallery owner he had been and who had emigrated to New York. Greet your dear wife and Neumann, please. He should pay me for the Beckmanns, at least something. I have no money. It can be concluded from this postcard that the art dealer Neumann took advantage of his colleague Flechtheim's precarious situation. Indeed, after his escape from Germany, Flechtheim was no longer able to enforce his claims against debtors. In order to survive, he sold paintings from his private collection, for example, 2 paintings of Juan Gris, to English collectors. There is no documentation that Neumann or Franke ever paid for the 6 Beckmann paintings. Lawyer Stötzl therefore argues that the Quabi portrait and the other Beckmanns are still in the possession of Flechtheim's Flechtheim, respectively his heirs. Michael Halton experienced what most Jewish heirs and their lawyers experienced with German museum when they asked about their family's lost works of art. Their directors and legal advisors initially played for time, especially when it came to expensive paintings by well-known artists. The museum officials initially stored the heirs. Then they commissioned all kinds of studies and reports. As far as Alfred Flechtheim is concerned, there's absolutely no question that the National Socialists persecuted him, drove him into exile and ruin. Nevertheless, it took more than 2 years before Michael Halton, Penny Halton, and their lawyer Stötzl found a fair and just solution with the museum, as called for in the Washington Declaration, with the Art Museum in Bonn. In April 2012, it was agreed that the heirs would receive a compensation of 25,000 euros for the painting Lighthouse with a Rotating Rays by the Rhinish expressionist Paul Adolf Seehaus, about half the market value. The painting remained in the museum in Bonn. That is sometimes easier to reach agreements with private owners of looted art than with state actors had become apparent 6 months earlier at the end of 2011. An old man from Munich consigned a gouache by Max Beckmann to the Cologne auction house Lempertz that had once belonged to Alfred Flechtheim. Der Löwenbändiger, The Lion Tamer, from 1930. Markus Stötzl, the Flechtheim heirs lawyer, claimed a share of the auction proceeds. The auction house legal advisor brokered a deal between the consigner and the Flechtheim heirs, who each received half of the 864,000 euros that the painting brought in. The consigner was Cornelius Gurlitt, and 2 years later he caused a huge art scandal with a collection he had inherited from his father. Flechtheim also played an important role in the biggest German art forgery scandal after the Second World War, which came to light in 2010. Wolfgang Fischer, later Wolfgang Beltracchi, forged paintings in the style of Max Ernst and others, which were sold for more than 20 million euros. But Beltracchi made a bizarre mistake. On the backside of some of his forged paintings, he placed a label, Sammlung Flechtheim, which he had produced by himself, and which did not look like a Flechtheim label at all. This man, which is shown there, looks like, I don't know, a little gangster or so, but Flechtheim, who was very, interested and that he had an elegant appearance, would never have allowed such a label for his pictures. Also, the real labels had Galerie Flechtheim and not Sammlung Flechtheim. In the second restitution of a painting from the State Museum to the Flechtheim heirs, a committee played a decisive role, which is supposed to mediate in controversies between museums and heirs. The Beratende Kommission, Advisory Commission, its official title. Advisory Commission for the Return of Cultural Assets Confiscated as a Result of Nazi Persecution, particularly from Jewish ownership, long title. This commission, founded in 2003, can only take action if both parties in a restitution dispute appeal to it. Its recommendation on what fair solutions could look like are not legally binding. They only have a moral weight. During its meeting on March 19, 2013, the Commission recommended the restitution of the portrait of Stiller Durieux by Oskar Kokoschka from the Cologne Museum Ludwig to the Flechtheim heirs. The city of Cologne bowed to the commission's ruling. The Cologne cultural director had previously written to the lawyer Stotzel, "In this case in particular, it is clear that impatience cannot help the matter." Just a personal remark or insert, as a journalist who wrote about different kinds of restitution scandals, it always happened that letters to be answered that takes months and months and not to hurry. So it is quite, I mean, for heirs or for lawyer who apply for, who wait for answers if they claim the restitution, it is very unnerving. But it in most cases, it happens. 3 years later, in 2016, the commission rejected the Flechtheim heirs application, the painting by Paul Klee, The Feather Plant, and Still Life with Fruit by Juan Gris, according to the mission, did not have to be restituted by the North Rhine-Westphalian art collection. The Washington principles state, the pre-war owners and their heirs should be encouraged to register their claims to works of art. Michael Halden found the reception by the Advisory Commission in Berlin anything but encouraging. On the contrary, he was quite shocked at how condescending and curt he and his lawyer were treated in Berlin. Things were different abroad. In September 2018, the Stockholm Moderna Museet restituted a 1910 portrait of Marquis José Montesquieu Fersenac by Oskar Kokoschka to the Flechtheim heirs. The following month, in October 2018, the New York Guggenheim Museum restituted the 1915 painting Soldatenbad, Soldier's Bath, by Ernst Ludwig Kirchner to the Flechtheim heirs. Guggenheim director Richard Armstrong stated, after an extensive investigation into the extraordinary circumstances surrounding this work, and in accordance with the Washington Declaration of 1998, we are very pleased that it is being returned to the Haldens. A Soldatenbad or Soldier's Bath was auctioned at Sotheby's in New York on November 12, 2018 for $19.2 million US. The Norwegian Savings Bank Foundation was awarded the contract. It is now displayed in a museum in Oslo. It quickly became clear to everyone involved in questions of restitution and looted art that the Advisory Commission is a toothless instrument that urgently needs to be reformed. But although the Commission is called upon to deal with issues of cultural property, particularly from Jewish ownership, it took until 2016, from its establishment in 2003, to the decision that there should be 2 Jewish representatives among the 10 members of the Commission. That means 13 years. A second and probably the most crucial construction flaw in this commission is that it could only take action when both sides in the restitution dispute would call upon the commission. And this is also an important reason why the commission has only been able to make recommendation in 23 cases in 20 years. Federalism is strong in Germany, as you know. It is even stronger if it comes to culture or Kulturpolitik. The most problematic performance of the 16 states or Länder with regard to the restitution of looted art has been done by the proud Free State of Bavaria, der Freistaat Bayern. Picasso's painting Madame Solaire, which once belonged to the Berlin banker Paul Mendelssohn Bartholdy, has become a nationwide symbol of the failed search for fair solutions of looted art. The management of the Bavarian State Painting Collection repeatedly states that they have examined and confirmed the provenance of the work. I would ask you to finally understand and comprehend that said the Bavarian culture minister, Markus Blume, Christian Social Union, in the Bavarian state parliament, that Madame Soler is not a controversial issue. And because it's not a dispute, it cannot be a case for the advisory commission. Subsequently, members of the CSU, together with the Free Voters and the right-wing extremist AfD, refused to call the commission. The Bavarians have not covered themselves in glory, says Flechtheim, a lawyer, Markus Stötzel, quite cautiously. In 2012, the Munich Museum officials had already broken off contact with him regarding the Beckmann paintings. Before that, they had made it clear to him that they would not support a call to the advisory commission. In February of this year, the Süddeutsche Zeitung, a liberal national daily, quite influential, received a list of the paintings in the Bavarian state painting collection for which there are problems with a possible restitution. It also emerged on this occasion that the Munich Museum bureaucrats had by no means entered all of these paintings in the public database intended for this purpose. What demoralizes and unnerves the heirs, it all takes ages. Flechtheim, Michael Carlton has since written a book entitled Jewish and Gay Avant-Garde in Nazi Germany, Uncle Alfred Flechtheim's Unexpected Legacy in Arts, AIDS and Law. And Carlton donated his share of the painting sales primarily to charitable organizations, including a research center for HIV cure research and the synagogue in his neighborhood in San Francisco. On the 8th of January 2025, this year, the federal German government eventually decided to install a Schiedsgericht, a court of arbitration for controversial cases concerning looted art. Representatives of the federal and state governments, as well as the Zentralrat der Juden in Deutschland, the Central Council of Jews in Germany, and the Jewish Claims Conference will appoint the members of this arbitration court. It is unclear when this will happen. Maybe this year, maybe next year. Probably next month, we will get a new federal government in Germany with a new Minister for Culture. It will not be a Green politician anymore, but very likely a Christian Democrat. We don't know who it will be. We don't know if he or she is fully supporting this arbitration court of the outgoing government. Greens are usually more restitution friendly than conservatives. It would have made sense to pass a restitution law many years ago, according to which all questions of possible restitutions are regulated and can be reviewed by courts. Austria, France, and other countries have such laws. Ronald Lauder had already called for a German restitution law in a lecture in Berlin in 2013. You have to take into account that such a law would not solve everything, because private owners of looted art would not allow themselves to be expropriated under such law, possibly. The protection of private property is very strong in the German legal system, but a restitution law would solve all the cases with the big state museums. There are no easy solutions, and politicians do not have much to gain from the restitution of looted art. It is an issue that the majority of Germans simply don't care about. Against this background, it is still unclear. Will the heirs, not only Flechtheims, will the heirs succeed in getting justice if they persevere? I have become more pessimistic, says the Flechtheim heirs lawyer, Markus Stötzel. Let's hope, that is my little personal comment, let's hope it won't be right. The longer I I was concerned. I was writing about doing research about art restitution and about the case of Flechtheim. The more I got convinced that eventually all these paintings have to be given back. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, and I'm ready to take any questions now.
Thank you so much, Michael. This was so much information, and and this was, I have to mention, this was only about restitution from museums in Germany, right? There are all the other countries also that have very different laws and very different ways of dealing with restitution cases. And I find it quite sickening how long it takes and how patient and ultimately how much money for lawyers, for research, the ears of the owners have to spend to even put their case together and then have it resting on someone's desk. So somebody is asking here, did Flechtheim's Jewish identity influence his collecting practices at all? Did he make it a point to collect works of art by Jewish artists?
Not that I would know. His important role, or what he did in Germany, was to bring French artists to Germany before the First World War already. So he traveled to Paris. He got to know some German artists who lived in Paris, and then his first love were the paintings of Picasso and Braque, Cubism. And that's what he bought for a long time. And then after the First World War, he started to buy or to commission modern German art expressionists mainly. So I wouldn't think that he was especially interested in Jewish artists or non-Jewish artists. I haven't found any information going in that direction.
Thank you. So Sherry is asking, first of all, thanking you for your fascinating presentation, and is asking you to please repeat the name of the artist of Lighthouse in the Woods, which was on slide 33. Now this is tough to.
The family name is Seehaus, but I have to look in my manuscript. He's got two first names. Paul, I just do that by the side, and then when I found it, I come back to that, so we can take another question first.
Okay. Sarah May is asking, to what extent do the archival materials make a distinguishment between Flechtheim's private collecting practices and his gallery stock books?
The main problem, I mean, as a historian, it's all about sources. You need documents. And the problem is that during the Nazi era and the Second World War, so many documents were just went missing or were destroyed that there's nothing left from the Flechtheim galleries. Also, his Berlin gallery was liquidated, but the documents are gone. And then in Düsseldorf, his gallery, there was this German, who took it over, Axel Föhmel, that former manager, and he quite likely privatized some of the gallery stocks, and then after the war, tell phony stories about what happened, but also there are no documents left. So yeah, as a historian, you find a postcard where Flechtheim is complaining that he's broke and that he's the money, but these are no proper sources, proper documents where you could say this was his private collection, this was the gallery, this was in commission, this was bought by the gallery. It is impossible today. I mean, the two people who I would think know most about the Flechtheim pictures, they can agree that it is maybe around 300 paintings we're talking about, but that's an estimation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the case, Sarah, may ask an additional question. Could you clarify in what archives you have conducted your research? So, yeah.
And I mean, basically, I mean, Markus Stötzl, the lawyer of the Flechtheim Heirs, he did a lot of research, and he was so kind to provide me with. Also, I mean, I could read the correspondence between him and museums, and then the museums. I mean, they have done something. They started also. They started their own research. Nevertheless, you always have the impression the research has an underlying or subcontext that hopefully this piece of art has been acquired legally, and that we don't have to give it back. So it's the role of art historians. It was what a job. I mean, huge job creation for art historian was this restitution provenance researches, which started after the Washington Agreement. That's maybe we should make the point that at least the Washington Agreement somehow started the museums who would not have addressed the whole issue at all. It was enough pressure on them, especially for German museums, to look what problematic province they have. And so quite a young generation of art historians start to do case studies. But I mean, every case, every painting is different. And then, I mean, you have to do research about things which happened 100 years ago. So it is very, very difficult. And also, it's not state documents. So a private gallery like the Flechtheim Gallery, they don't have to keep their records for the next hundreds of years. So the gallery is liquidated, the stuff goes to the rubbish. So it is very difficult to solve these restitution problems. But in the Flechtheim case, especially the 6 Beckmann paintings in Munich, I think it's quite clear. And at the moment, that there is some public pressure building up against the Bavarian politicians. So I'm quite optimistic that something will happen.
I'm happy to add to that public pressure with this event, Mike.
Hopefully we do. Yeah.
So Peter Stein is writing, the lighthouse painting is by Paul Adolf Seehaus.
That's right, Paul Adolf Seehaus. Right.
And he lived from 1891 to 1919. So we have that solved. So someone is asking, was Flechtheim interested in photography?
No, except, I mean, his main interest were their paintings. And then I would say it's a little hobby. He started to buy what I called the South Sea. I mean, what was it? Some sculptures from I don't know, which were looted by German troops in the South Sea or whatever. That was so you would say, I don't know, or back then you would say primitive art or tribal art. That was something which was interesting for him. I mean, it was very far away from the paintings he would have in his beautiful flats in Bleibtreustraße in Berlin. But also you can see there some little sculptures. So that was his second interest, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Did Alfred Flechtheim have any siblings?
No, a good question. I've never read and heard about any siblings by him, but oh gosh, I can't tell you. I'm sorry. In the whole, now in the whole restitution, case, there are not any heirs from any siblings who play any role or whoever appeared. So I guess there are no, but and also, I mean, if he would have siblings, he would have made maybe another will. He gave the will to what was the husband of what was it? Sister-in-law, right? So,
right.
Mr. Houghton.
Very true. Yeah. So did Bertha, Brian is asking, did Bertha Flechtheim return to the apartment in Bleibtreustraße after Alfred's tragic death, or had she moved some of the collection to another apartment where she was to end her life?
It was another apartment. I mean, I think it was Düsseldorfer Straße in West Berlin, also Wilmersdorf, Charlottenburg, nice area. It was a 5-room apartment. But as you can see on I think the Bleibtreustraße, the grand the apartment in Bleibtreustraße, there they lived till 33. And she, I mean, committed suicide in 41. So in between, she moved. Also, when Alfred, in the beginning, he could travel to Berlin, but then he stayed in London or Paris, or mainly London, and she stayed in Berlin. So she, I mean, 5 rooms is still a lot, but so she did not live in the common apartment.
Yeah. So Naomi actually just looked up in Jenny and saw that Alfred had a brother, Hermann, and a sister, Erna Lowenstein. So there seem to be siblings, which I never heard of myself. So
yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for looking it up.
So there's always something new to learn, which is really exciting. So Michael, is it from what I understood in the end of your talk is that it's very much a political question, whether there's pressure on restitutions to be processed or not. Is that true? And is it different in the different states within Germany?
Yeah, it is a political question, but journalists can do a lot. So just recently, Süddeutsche Zeitung, I mentioned it, they found out, or there was a whistleblower inside the Bayerische Schatzgemäldesammlung. There was a whistleblower who gave a list of pieces of art where there were different restitution problems to Süddeutsche Zeitung. And so Zeitung could, the journalists there could see, okay, they see, and they're different colors. So red are the probably works of art we have probably to restitute, and then there's orange. So the different grades, how serious the museum take the restitution claims, and these. This list, you could see that many of the paintings who were on this list were not in the lost art database. because we have a lost art database where museums, following the Washington Agreement, are obliged to put in pieces of art from which they think there might be restitution problems. This did not happen. And that was the Bavarian Minister for Culture was and is under quite enormous pressure. And so I think journalists can do something, and because it's the issue about it's about German past, it's about Nazi Germany, then it's about Jews who were deported and robbed and everything. So there is, if it comes to morality, because the legal situation is quite vague, if it comes to morality, the heirs have a very good position, and they're always, most of journalists, there are not that many, but I would say half a dozen journalists who have been working on these restitution cases for the last 15 years, they all agree, give it back. I mean, there aren't any journalists who say, no, that there are good reasons not to give them back. No. And so, I mean, we should continue, but we have the problem that, look at the war in Ukraine, look at what's happening in Gaza. There are always other issues which are bigger in the media than art restitution. Art restitution is a minor, quite exotic issue for the big media.
Yeah. And it's also it's complicated because even in a collection by one owned by one person, every painting can have a different restitution story, right? So it's quite complicated, and we haven't spoken even about works on paper, right? Because they usually don't have such a good they're not so easy to research, especially prints where there are multiple, right? So
yeah, I mean, in a way, I think it would be over-optimistic to believe that all these open cases or cases where still are not really quite clear can be solved. I mean, it's just time is playing against us.
yeah,
And so, but I would be happy if such prominent cases, and Alfred Flechtheim was the most important collector and art or gallery owner in the 1920s. If his case would be solved, that would be something. I don't talk about 3 books, which a library, state library with a big ceremony gives back to some heirs. I'm talking about the builder of Max Beckmann and important German artist. If this would be a symbol that today's politicians are willing to come to an end with this and with these open cases and this robbery.
right. I totally agree. And I do remember about 10 years ago, I spoke to a museum director, and he said, as a director of a German museum, I don't have the legal pressure, but I do have the moral and ethical responsibility to return all artworks that were looted. And I wish, it would be still the case, or it would be again the case that museum directors in Germany would think that way, and actually beyond Germany as well.
Yeah, but still then, I mean, there is this, the Bavarian case is the most interesting.
Right.
There, the head of the Staatsgemäldesammlung, in one case, he said, I would vote for the restitution. And what did the Minister for Culture do? He didn't do anything. 2 years, he didn't decide on that. So there may be good museum people, but on top of them, they have these cultural politicians, and they think, oh God, if I'm seen responsible of losing such a beautiful painting, that might be a problem for my image or whatever.
Right. And they might not need to lose the paintings, right? Because very
Oh,
often the heirs find ways to make arrangements with the museums that own the works. So sometimes they have to sell because they need to pay their lawyers, right? But very often there are agreements with the museums, so that's a possibility too, no?
but there was a kind of mean way to smear heirs, saying, I remember a headline in a Berlin paper, yeah, literally saying, they say Holocaust, but they mean money, yeah. And so this stereotype of Jewish heirs who want to get their hands on pictures, carry them to Sotheby's next morning, and then making millions. This is also, I think, a very disgusting or awful
Right.
way of I mean, discrediting people who just want to have their property back. I mean, how can that in a capitalistic society, how can that be wrong that heirs of people who got robbed want that back? I mean, how do you, I mean, come to judge their motives and to tell them what they're allowed to do with the money they get or what not to do?
Right, right. Exactly. I agree.
So we all agree.
This is a very good moment to thank you very much, Michael, for illuminating Alfred Flechtheim, this visionary art dealer, art collector for us, and tell his life story and give us a glimpse into the difficulty for the heirs to get the stolen art collection back. So thank you so very much. And I hope that it's possible to pressure the Bavarian politicians to speed up the return of all the artworks in their collections.
Rachel, thank you very much for having me, and I hope maybe I could raise the interest and about Alfred Flechtheim among the audience. There are a few good books in German. Meanwhile, I don't know about the English situation, but it is a very interesting person. He was very important for the German art scene and between the wars. And he is a fascinating man. He was a fascinating man. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Take good care, everyone. Thank you. Bye.